Welcome everybody. It is now week 2 in our spring knit along featuring the Dancing Dragonfly mitten pattern. I'll just bring this up to the camera so you can have a closer look. Beautiful stranded Sarah L knitting pattern featuring hand-dyed fingering weight merino. So this is a brand new pattern by Canadian designer Sarah L Kelley. I'll put the links below in the comments after. If you're new to the knit along and you're interested in joining or participating, we have had a live video last week. You'll find it in our event page, Dancing Dragonflies Knit Along. And all the tips and tutorials are listed there as well. And progress pics. That's the best part, seeing all the progress pics from your fellow knit-alongers and cheering them on. Just to see the combos that they've chosen and how they are transforming is quite amazing. So today I'm going to show you my progress on my first mitten, and I will go over some of the helpful tips that will hopefully help you as you move from the cuff into the main part of the first mitten. So let's see who is joining us. Hi Mary, hi Diane, hi Shelley, hi Leslie, hi Judy. How is everybody's day so far? And how is your progress in your knitting this week? This is our, I think this is day 2 or 3 of our stay at home and knit order, which is going on in Ontario for a month. So we have lots of knitting time ahead. I know, I added the part about and knit. It's really a stay home order. But if we're staying home, why not be knitting? So we do have 2 featured yarns for this knit along. Just to recap, I'm using the Malabrigo sock, which is pure superwash merino, which means it can go in the wash machine, but something this delicate, I think I'll always wash by hand, just to be extra careful with them. They're so tiny and it'd be easy just to soak them in a bowl of Eucalyptus wool wash, squeeze out the suds, and let them dry flat. But it is good to have superwash if needed. And the other yarn featured is Riverside Studio, which is a Canadian dyer from Wakefield, Quebec, mother and daughter dye team. So this is a combination of merino, cashmere, and nylon. In the yarny world, it's known as MCN, which is the short form, merino, cashmere, nylon. So these are 100-gram skeins, fingering weight. The cashmere gives it a nice touch of luxury and a bit of a sheen. And we are doing either a black or a charcoal or a dark navy as the main color, because you need to have that high contrast between your contrast color and your main color. So something like what I'm using, which is Indicita in Malabrigo and black, basic black, will work well together. Now in the Malabrigo we have Aguas, which is a little bit more into the teals and greens than what I'm using. They look similar, but they are actually quite different. So this is the Indicita and this is the Aguas. So mine has a bit of the periwinkle blue at the top, and the one at the bottom is all greens and teals. And then we have a very, very dark royal purple. I don't think anyone has picked this one. That's Dewberry. And this has been a popular choice. Some of you have chosen it for your mittens. Light of Love. That is a gorgeous rosy hot pink, coral, and flamingo pink. So that would pair really nicely with the charcoal or the black. And then we have a color which is almost identical to the actual pair of mittens shown in the pattern. Hi Joanne, hi Sandy, hi Lynn, hi Shelley, hi Lee. This one, oh, this is the one I'm using, sorry, this is Indicida. So this one has a little pop of lime green or spring green and periwinkle and turquoise. So I've already shown you that one. And yeah, so those are the colors. This is the charcoal gray. We're getting low on our colors now. We've had some new knit-alongers joining this week. And again, there's no deadline. We're just doing this for the month of April, but you can finish anytime you like. So welcome to the new knit-alongers. Lori has joined us. Nancy has joined us this week. And I better check my list. Andrea M, Louise M. So each of you, as well as the original knit-alongers, have a ballot just for joining the knit-along. You have a ballot in our grand prize bucket. Lots of names in here. And we will have a grand prize draw at the end of the 4 weeks. We do it live. That's just something that's a little bit more of an incentive when you're participating. And each week we also do an incentive ballot prize for a trivia question. So that will be at the end of this episode. So please hang in till the very end and you might be the randomly picked winner. That means you have to answer a question in the comment section. That's all you have to do. Nothing difficult. And unfortunately, I did not get the prize wrapped and ready to show you this week. So I do promise it'll be on the table right over here next week. So you can see all the contents. And that's also a great incentive to finishing your project. Hi, Nancy. Nancy loves her color choice. Believe it or not, Nancy was thinking of doing the knit-along a few weeks ago, and she showed the picture to some of the girls in her family, and nobody was really 100% taken with the mitts, so she really didn't think she would be participating this time in the knit-along. But then a miracle happened over Easter weekend. One of the girls in her family said she would love the dragonfly mittens, so now Nancy has chosen the colors and she's happy to start. Hi, Shelley. Yes, it's quite a surprise. You know, it looks very daunting in the beginning, but once you start, you get past your cuff, it really does knit up fairly quickly. I try to do a few rounds every morning because I find the light is better. You have to be careful when you're working with the dark colors. It could be a disaster in the making if you do not have good lighting or your eyes are tired, which happens to all of us now. So some of you had the option of knitting in the little cuff lining. This was not included in Sarah's pattern, but it's just something to add into the pattern. That's the great thing about a knit-along. You can have options and you can personalize the pattern in whatever way you would like to. So I'm going to bring this up closer to the camera and show you my progress. Hi Sarah, thanks for joining us. How is the weather today in St. Albert, Alberta? So Sarah is the designer of the pattern. I've been waiting for her to post in the comments that she has found us live, and we're going to do a little Q&A with Sarah today. She's not here in person. She lives in St. Albert, Alberta, which is northwest of Edmonton. It's a city, I think, of about 60,000 people, and that's where she's joining us from. So while she is on, maybe we'll get to the Q&A and then I'll show you my progress after. Because for Sarah, I think it's 2 or 3 hours behind us. I don't know. Definitely a different time zone. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Sarah 5 questions, and she's going to answer them in the comments so we can all read them and get more familiar with our chosen designer for this knit along. I think it's always fun to know a little bit of the backstory behind a design and how things tick and work in a designer's mind. They are very creative and they can see things, they can just look at yarn and know what it's going to become. So it's very magical. I'm glad you found us, Sarah. Okay, question number 1 for Sarah. What was the inspiration behind your dancing dragonfly mitten pattern? I think that's probably the most pressing question that any of us would have on our mind as we're knitting up your pattern. Just where did the inspiration come from? I've been thinking about that. My mind sort of drifts and I have questions as I'm knitting. So we'll give Sarah a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes to answer the question, and then I'll ask her another one. I think she's going to number her answers to match the question that I'm asking, because there's always a bit of a time delay between me speaking and you posting on Facebook. Surprisingly, in Muskoka today we have drizzle and rain right now, but this week we have jumped ahead into our summer season, which happened last year. We had summer for a few weeks and then we went back to spring. So in your area, wherever you are, I hope you're having good weather. Hi, Gwyneth. Yes, I think we all love the pattern, Sarah. You're really on to a good thing. And there are going to be more dragonfly designs coming from Sarah. And I'll be sure to post the links to Sarah's Ravelry page. She's on Instagram, she's on Etsy, she's on Facebook. So I will post all those in the comments below. So Sarah has answered question number 1. Well, that's a great answer. I kind of already knew a little bit about that story. Question number 2 for Sarah. Is designing knitwear something that you have found always appealed to you, or did you just fall into it? That's question number 2. That happens to a lot of knitwear designers. They have another chosen career for a period of time, and then they might just start knitting as a hobby, and then all of a sudden something clicks and they start designing their own patterns, and it just takes off from there and it becomes a full-time job. We've seen that happen with a lot of designers on Ravelry. I think we're all enjoying knitting our mittens so much that we're actually taking time to do each stitch carefully and mindfully, not rushing to the finish line. I usually knit very quickly because I do samples for the store, but this time I'm just taking my time, enjoying the process, in no hurry because, you know, we won't be wearing mittens for a few more months anyway. Okay, we have an answer to question number 2. Oh, so there is a little bit of knitwear design in your heritage. And your mom owned a yarn store when you were younger. Well, you and I have something in common. My mom owned a few different yarn stores too. So it was in my blood as well. Question number 3 for Sarah. Do you generally work up a design as you're knitting it, or is there a lot of pre-planning involved? So that's there's a big difference there for designers. Some of them can knit just from what they're seeing in their mind's eye and then write down the pattern afterwards. And then the other method is to chart everything out and have a full schematic of what it's going to be and then follow it. So it'll be interesting to know which way Sarah likes to do it. Oh, Andrea's mentioned a book, King and the Dragonflies. I've never heard of that. I'm going to have to look it up now. Hmm, interesting. Who doesn't need a good book to read on a rainy day? Yeah, so I know last week's goal was to finish the cuff, and many of you have posted pictures. So you finished the Latvian braid here, and I think for this week we're going to try to get to the thumb opening. I'm just past the thumb opening, so today I can give you some tips on that part. And we have an answer to question 3. Okay, so it's a bit of both. That's quite amazing. I wish I was as organized as you are. And now we have question 4 for Sarah. What is your favorite type of knitting? Do you prefer color work? Obviously you like to do some color work. Or do you prefer textured knitting? So we can probably tell by looking at your previous designs what you prefer, but it's always nice to ask and find out if maybe you're going to drift towards a different style of pattern work in the future. So that's question 4. In the meantime, I'm going to show you my progress pick up close. Okay, so I have just reached, I'm on to wing number 4 in the first dragonfly. And I did the alternate method with the liner cuff, so that can be worn under the sleeve cuff of a jacket, or I can fold it under, and that will give me a draft stopper on my wrist. And I have my markers in place. We just got in the new colorful dragonfly markers. And I have switched to the 9-inch circular needles. I'm going to talk a little bit about that after, how I feel about the 9-inch, because it is a love-hate relationship for many of us knitters. So Sarah has answered question number 4. Oh, she loves a good cable pattern. Yes, that really keeps you interested. And she loves color work. Watching the image appear. It is really like creating a painting or a picture just with your needles and yarn. So question number 5 for Sarah, where is your idyllic knitting spot? And we have some exciting news from Sarah. She has a new pattern coming out. I think it's still slated for April 10th. Maybe she'll mention in the comments, which is tomorrow, Saturday. And it is the Dancing Dragonfly hat pattern, which is worked up in a DK weight yarn, but it does have elements of the mitten design in it. So that will be coming out on Ravelry. So that's very exciting. So we'll wait for Sarah's final answer to question number 5. I hope you've had time to look at our event page and check out some of the WIPs that have been posted, because they really look awesome. I'm waiting to see this pinky coral color knit up, and I'm waiting to see yours, Nancy. Nancy picked a charcoal gray for the main color, and then she's picked a beautiful cream base with little speckles of teal and red throughout. So it's going to be a very opposite color. Instead of having a strong Dragonfly color. It's going to be a very pale and subtle color, but still good contrast. And she has picked her contrast color from Riverside Yarns. Okay, we have an answer to question number 5. Corner of the couch, yes. You should always have your knitting spot claimed from the rest of the family so they don't touch any of your important tools and your stash. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah, for doing a little Q&A with us. I think that was fun, and it gives some background for all our fellow knitters. And I will post all the links to your social media so we can follow your creative journey and watch as the new patterns come out. I'm looking forward to possibly the release of a KAL pattern and maybe wrist warmers. But we know it takes time. There's always a lot of background work for a pattern release, so it's not something that can just happen with the snap of our fingers. Okay, so I guess I'll go into the tech tips now. As I mentioned, I've switched after the cuff from the Zing double point needles. I know a lot of you are using those. They're the aluminum shaft with the steel tips. They're beautiful needles to work with. They're very lightweight, possibly a little bit slippy for those of you who are used to working with wood. So that gives you a slick, fast speed. So for a comparison study, I thought I would switch to the 9-inch circulars, which are Gu brand. And they're known to have a very flexible cord, it's easy to maneuver, and a really nice join to the needle tip. And I am using the 2.5 millimeter for my mitten. So the only things I have found different on the 9-inch circular is that I don't get the ladders in between my double point needles, which is sometimes a problem for me. And B, I knit a little firmer because there is no play between these needle tips. You cannot stretch the needle tips apart because you're working in a very confined 9-inch circle. So if you feel that you are knitting a bit too loose with your double points, you might do well on the 9-inch. You're going to find your hands maybe cramp up in the beginning, finger and thumb in between the index finger and the thumb and below the thumb. It's just a matter of developing those muscles that you're not used to using in those areas. So I'm going to continue on the 9-inch up to the shaping of the fingertip section and then go back to my DPNs. So I don't mind working on both. And then of course the thumb I will do on the double point needles because there's just too few stitches to work effectively with the 9-inch. I know some of you are doing 2 longer circular needles, magic loop style. Are you enjoying that, or are you finding you're going to switch to a double point needle? Oh, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. Have you looked at our event page to see all the beautiful pictures? Yes, so Sarah's just confirming her beanie pattern will be available tomorrow morning on Ravelry and Etsy. And she chose the DK weight because some people don't like the finer yarn and needles. And you know, you get more warmth too in a DK hat, especially for the cold winters in Alberta and Ontario, than a fingering weight. A fingering weight hat is better for the off-season, spring, late spring, and fall towards winter. So I think it was a good choice for the DK weight. I do have a big reveal coming up, so I hope Sarah is going to be on a bit longer to see a finished pair of mittens in her pattern. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what I did differently for the thumb. This is in no way changing up the pattern. It's just offering alternative methods to try new techniques. That's all. So I will bring it over to the camera and you can see what I've done. So in the pattern, Sarah is recommending using a bit of waste yarn or a stitch holder to put your thumb opening stitches on, and then casting on with the two colors, just as you've done the cast on at the bottom, the two color cast on. And then after you finish the mitten part, you're instructed to go back and pick up and knit the stitches from the scrap yarn or the stitch holder, and then pick up and knit around the back of the opening, which was your cast on section. So I like to do the afterthought thumb method, or I call it the magic thumb, because it just pops out of nowhere. So if you choose to do this method, I'll put more information in the event page. You can see that I used a high contrast fingering weight piece of scrap yarn in the lime green, and all I did was knit across the same number of stitches according to what the chart specifies for your thumb opening. So there's no difference to where I'm making the thumb opening, it's just how I'm securing my stitches. And then once I've knit across that number of stitches with the waste yarn, I slip those from the left needle, I slip them from the right needle to the left needle, so I can knit across those in my regular pattern with my two colors. So they are secure, and then after I finish the knit, I'm going to unpick the waste yarn and then put all the stitches onto 3 needles and knit with the 4th double point. So that is my alternate method for the thumb opening, but I'll try to put more step-by-step directions in the event page with a close-up image so you can see what to do there. So maybe a reason for switching is for somebody who does, someone who has a very sensitive thumb and maybe doesn't like to feel a slight ridge where the stitches have been picked up for the thumb, and maybe somebody who is not feeling very confident about where to pick up the stitches for the thumb from the stitches that are cast on. This way all your stitches are there, it's just a matter of getting them onto the needles. So you have two choices, it's really up to you, there's no right or wrong way, it's strictly preference. And Diane is saying she switched from the Chow-Goo magic loop to a short cable wooden needle only because it's more comfortable to hold. I'm not used to small needles and fine yarn. Yeah, I can understand that. I find I knit much slower on the 9-inch circular than I do on the double point needle, so there are pros and cons to both methods, but less chance of losing stitches. On a 9-inch circular, I've got only my 2 point protectors on, and I won't lose stitches from the opposite end. So that's another pro for sure. Yes, you have to remember too, in your charted pattern, that there is a line for the right thumb and there is a line for the left thumb. So Sarah mentions that in the written directions, but if you're wondering when you look at the chart just quickly, if you're just starting the pattern this week, there are 2 thumb openings marked, but obviously we don't do both on one mitten. It's just a way of reversing the pattern for the second mitten. So the placement is very important for right and left. And knitting in floats. So today I posted a good tutorial by Very Pink Knits. She has some great helpful videos for knitters. I posted on the events page she's featuring some tips for stranding and knitting in your floats for continental and the English method of throwing the yarn, which might be helpful. I know everybody has their own preferred method, but I knit continental way, So what I can do is maybe show you how I hold the yarn and the two colors. But you have to remember that you should be knitting in your floats about every third stitch. You don't have to do it every stitch. That's not recommended because then you have no elasticity in the fabric. It's too tight. It feels stiff like cardboard. Every third stitch is pretty standard in KAL knitting, and you'll find that knitwear designers who make up charts for KAL, you'll find that they're always thinking of us because there's not too often in a pattern where you have a long stretch of the main color and you have to carry over numerous times the contrast color. In Sarah's pattern, for instance, she puts in little florets or flowers around the dragonfly wings, and those are almost like little resting spots for you so that you don't have to strand across an open background area or middle of the ocean. You've got those little islands built in the design so that you're never going across too many stitches. I think the most I've gone across so far is maybe 7. So there's always a reason why designers put these little motifs where they do. And another tip for doing your knitting in of your floats is try to look at your last round. So if you're going across 5 or 7 stitches and you're going to be directly above a contrast color stitch from the previous round, well, that is a built-in opportunity for you to knit in your float right above the contrast stitch, because that way it blends into the stitch below. It's not out in the middle of the ocean on its own. So I call those little islands, I take advantage of them, and I knit in the floats as I go past the islands. Yeah, I think those are all the tips I wanted to show you today. So I'm going to bring this up and show you how I hold the yarn. Hi, Karen. My method is continental, so it might be a bit confusing, but that just means I hold the yarn in my left hand as a knitter. So I have both strands on my index finger of my left hand. And continental knitters do something called picking. So they're just sort of picking at the yarn instead of throwing it over the needle. So that way I can decide to pick contrast color, which is at the front, or main color, which is at the back. I try to keep them separated on my index finger by about quarter to sometimes half an inch, and that way they don't tangle as much. And what I mean by the little islands of stitches, going across the base of wing number 3 on the first dragonfly, you'll see that there is quite a few black or main color stitches here. So I have the opportunity above this little flower, which is formed on the previous round, to knit in my float above the contrast color. And that way it doesn't show, it blends into the previous row, and then I can knit in a float above this stitch and this stitch. So take advantage of those opportunities in your design work, and that way your contrast color will not show through the main color. I think there was another tip about stranding. Well, of course you need to have some stretch, don't do it too tight. If you feel that your stitching is looking a bit uneven, or if the cuff is flipping up at the bottom, don't worry about any of that. You're working with such good quality yarns that when you do the blocking afterwards, this will not roll up, it'll flatten out at the bottom, and your stitches will even themselves out. They'll relax into place. They're not under stress like they are now. So that all comes out in the wash at the very end. A good wool wash like the KAL will work wonders. I'm still going to go over, I think next week, how to finish your Latvian braid contrast color at the beginning tail end, so you get a nice smooth join. It's not looking uneven. That will be in the cuff section. And yeah, so we're going to give two options for shaping the top. We've got one that brings it to a point with the decreasing and then finalizes all the stitches as you would the top of a hat. So that's written in the pattern, and then I'll show you another method on the big reveal. I think it's time for the big reveal, don't you? I've teased you long enough. Okay, so we had a knit-alonger who joined a week before we started, which is fine, and she knit the entire mittens in the first week so that she was finished when we were actually casting on. She is an amazing knitter, and she offered, very kindly offered, for me to show them on camera today and the extra little things that she has added. Does anybody know what she has added? These are museum quality hand knit mittens. They are going to be around for a long time and treasured. So I'm going to show you close to the camera if I can what she has added. They are much heavier than any of the mittens that we're knitting. So she did the extra cuff lining, and she chose a knit to purl to. She also sewed the cuff to the inside, so it's a permanent lining. So that's something you can consider while you're knitting the top of your mitten. Do you want the lining to be fastened to the inside with a whip stitch after, or do you want it to be flexible so that you can pull it out for extra length? So in the cuff she has knit in these gorgeous little beads. We've got I think a square bead here and a mother of pearl, and then a deep plum translucent bead. So she's put one in the center of each of the flowers. But she didn't stop there. She has worked in beads into the entire wing section of both dragonflies. And she didn't stop there. She even worked in beads into the very top flower at the fingertips. Oh. When she brought them to the door earlier this week, I just felt like I was going to melt. They're so gorgeous. But she didn't stop there. After she knit in all the beads, these are number 6 beads, by the way. That's important to know if you're thinking of adding in a few for a special effect. She also outlined all the wings in a stem stitch using the contrast color. So it sort of lifts the wings away and makes them 3D. And she added some little stitching down the center of the wings. It's all very subtle. You have to look extremely closely to see all the detail work. And then, can you see this silver metallic down the center of the dragonfly body, all the way to the tip of the curly tail? At first glance, I thought she had added in tiny, tiny little silver beads afterwards, but no. This is silver metallic filament that she has used afterwards, so it's an option for you as well. And she's embroidered it in kind of a Swiss darning fashion. I don't think she's put it on every stitch, or maybe she has. I have to put my glasses on for that. But it gives a really nice sparkle. silver sparkle right up to the head of the dragonfly, and then she's done it at the top too. They are absolutely stunning. And I hope you can see these, Sarah. So beads in the center of each flower, and beads on every stitch in the wings only. And these are beads that mimic the colors in her contrast color yarn. So I'm not sure if she was pre-planning or she happened to have the beads and put them in after she started knitting the mitts, and that just all randomly went together. She used Riverside Studio in the dark indigo with Waterloo, which is a speckled periwinkle lilac blue for the contrast color. And there is the back of her mitten, beautiful, and the thumb. Beautiful. Oh, I just can't stop looking at them. So that's something for you to consider as well. Would you like to put a few beads in, maybe to accent some parts of the wing, or maybe the eyes of the dragonfly? What about just like 2 beads for the eyes? Because that really mimics their large protruding eyes that can turn in all directions. Oh, I don't know. There's just so many options. I'll love to see all your ideas. Oh, Sarah's still here. Aren't they amazing? Blue ribbon winners for sure, Andrea. Well, if we actually had a fall fair, I don't think we had one last year in Bracebridge, unless it was online. But if we have a fall fair coming this year, I'm sure she's going to put those in, and she will win Judge's Choice Award for sure. Okay, so if you have any questions or you need a little bit of tech help, please post your questions in the comments. I'll go over and answer everything after the video airs. And you can also post an event page. There's always somebody who's maybe knit up a few rounds past where you are, and they can help you out. So for this week, a little bit of dragonfly trivia. Oh, one final thing. The knit-alonger who completed the gorgeous beaded mittens, she said she has plenty of yarn left for a second pair. So if you complete your first pair without the beads, remember you could knit a second pair and then do all the embellishments that you were thinking of doing while you were midway through the first pair. So some dragonfly trivia. Did you know dragonflies have been flying around for 300 million years? And the prehistoric ones had a wingspan of over 2.5 feet. 2.5 feet, that's probably about that wide. I don't think we would like the dragonflies quite as much. They wouldn't be as endearing to us if they were still that big. First of all, their wings would make a lot of noise, and their eyes would just be a little scary. So I appreciate them in the smaller size for sure. So this week's incentive ballot question, feel free to answer in the comments. You're not having to answer fastest. It's a randomly picked correct answer. So that's to get a ballot to go in our grand prize bucket. This week's question is, what do we call a group of dragonflies? There's a special name for it, just like there is a special name for a group of geese or cows or dogs. So what is the special name for the group of dragonflies? So post your guess or your answer in the comments, and we will have a randomly picked winner. Last week's incentive ballot winner was Tina M. She got the right answer. Congratulations to Tina. And while you're all thinking of the answer, I just received from our local maker a bowl full of dragonflies. So these are all the dragonfly markers that have just come in, the very colorful ones that I have on my mittens are really cute with a rubber ring. So these go on the needle. They're in blue, 2 shades of pink, red, orange, all the pretty spring colors, yellow, and lime green. I like that lime green with the pink ring on it. And then she's also put together some really pretty ones in silver pewter, and they would look lovely even on a chain as a necklace. And then the new Progress Keeper has a dragonfly within a circular ring. And more for our project size, she has a very tiny little guy here. Very dainty. So dragonflies are definitely full of meaning and something that we can celebrate, especially in the spring and the summer. Okay, we're getting some answers in. Everybody knows what the group of dragonflies is called. So we'll pick a winner after the video airs. So this week's goal, I know some of you are just starting, so don't feel under any pressure, but if you can try to get up to your thumb opening, and then you can decide what type of thumb opening you want to do. And if you're already well beyond that, then maybe up to the decreased sections without finalizing the top of your mitten, because you will have a choice of a little flap here or more of what they call the picket fence top, which makes the point. That's the traditional Latvian style. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed the big reveal. It was really hard for me not to post the whole picture of the mittens before today. I wanted you to be the first ones to see them. And thanks so much, Sarah, for joining us. That was really fun to learn a little bit more about your design aesthetics. And we look forward to seeing more of your patterns. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. Just keep on knitting, stay safe, stay creative, and stay connected.